So I know what you're thinking. We've already done a video about Lee Anderson, but forgive me. Tis the silly season. Tis a time to be silly and fun and engage in all types of jokes and japes. And Conservative Home has asked the serious question of, is Lee Anderson the future of politics? Now, to be honest, if someone came up to me and asked me this serious question, is Lee Anderson the future of politics? I would have to say, well, are you joking? That would, of course, come after I'd probably laughed in their face for at least a couple of minutes or so, only them to realize, say, yes, I am serious, to which I would then continue laughing, to which then my response would be, of course not. What are you generally on? But my general response to that question would be, if Lee Anderson is supposedly the future of politics, what policies has Lee Anderson talked about that would advance the betterment of the UK? Because Lee Anderson does not talk about policy. He is a mouthpiece and a slogan shouter, and he swears at migrants. And if Conservative Home is seriously asking, is he the future of politics? Then I don't know what kind of substance the writer in this case for Conservative Home was on. In fact, I think it was Paul Goodman, of all people. Kind of shocking, to be honest. But there you go. Clearly, the writers of the Conservative Home also being affected by the silly season. But we'll have a look into this because I think it is interesting to have a look at this question from a conservative point of view, written by someone who is a conservative. And we shall respond in a very mocking and joking manner. And we shall taketh the mickey, as they say. So, let us dive into this. But before we do that, please do remember to click the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And of course, there is the YouTube thank you button, the Pony Club as well down below. And of course, thank you very much to everyone who does help and support the channel. Even if you do, just click the like and share button. Like I say, it all helps. So let's go on into this highly serious article asking the question, is Lee Anderson the future of politics? To which the TDLR is no. No, he is not the future of politics. Even, I would love to point out, because we very rarely do this sometimes, but even in the comments, everyone is like, no, no, not at all. Even the first comment is, if the headline is a question, the answer is usually no. Otherwise, the author would be telling the audience rather than asking the audience. So let's go on into this. So, we must all hang together, or most assuredly, we shall all hang separately. So said Benjamin Franklin. And so says the political convention. But no one has told Lee Anderson. A very probably true statement about, of course, Benjamin Franklin, about, if they lose the, at the time of the American Revolution. But, okay, I see where you're coming from, but you'll see. So, the former miner, now Conservative Party deputy chairman, needs no introduction. He was this site's backbencher of the year in 2022. And how on earth he won that, who knows? But hey, as I said, this is why we go to Conservative Home, because they do these types of things regularly. And it is worrying sometimes, or very interesting, shall we say, who is the popular backbencher. But there you go. So the award did get some media pickup, coming as it did on December the 27th, when political news tends to be rather sparse. But perhaps they were reasonable, or perhaps as you are for Anderson's rise. At any rate, his pungent views need no introduction. There have been two spectacular examples this week. I would hardly call them spectacular examples, but there you go. Anyway, 4 days ago, he told the Daily Express that if asylum claimants don't like the barges, then they should F off back to France. Does Lee Anderson think then that they should stay in a place where they have a very good chance of, catching Legionnaire's disease? I don't think it should. And bear in mind, we do bear responsibility for them. Why we are, containing them on these barges. We are sort of responsible for that. Otherwise, we will face a lot of international condemnation, and we will face some sort of definite reaction to that. That's not a good thing. Not something we should want these people to suffer from. So, and of course, a day later, he said on GB News that I'm the deputy chair of the Conservative Party. We're in government, and we have failed on small boats. There is no doubt about that. Yes, because of your government's failed policy. This isn't a matter of anything else failing. It's your government's failure on this. And as we pointed out almost very recently as well in the last Lee Anderson video, this insistence on cracking down as hard as you possibly can on immigration doesn't seem to be working, because every single administration, really since Theresa May, has just gone harder and harder and harder on immigration. And you have to ask, will these people ever reach a point where they go, is our tactic of being just hard on immigration actually working? And the answer is no. We know why it's not working. It's the fact that they haven't funded the Home Office. They haven't got enough people to process these applications, and done so because of the cuts that George Osborne and David Cameron introduced back during austerity. And of course, if you had safe routes, well, you would end the small boats crossing overnight. But of course, you can't do that because, that's being soft on immigration. Then you have to ask the question, if you genuinely want to solve this problem, but you're not accepting that there are these legitimate solutions which you refuse to try, and yet we've just got to go harder, isn't working. Do you really want to solve the problem then? And I think the answer is just straight up no. But there you go. So it continues. No Tory frontbencher has dared to call Anderson out for lowering the political tone by deploying the F word, though some will doubtless think that he has. But Robert Jerrick had little alternative but to disagree with Anderson's verdict on the government record over small boats when asked about it. So another Tory split. Does it really matter? Well, this is again the Tories splitting over what to do about this immigration. As we said, there are legitimate ways you can actually do this, but the Tories don't want to do them. They don't want to pursue them because, that's soft on immigration. And as we said, there comes a point where you have to go, is your being hard on immigration, you're doubling down on that stance working? If it hasn't done anything to reduce immigration, you've still got all this backlog. Is your policy working? And the answer is no, but they can't accept that. So they've got to double down even harder on that degree. But there you go. Anyway, perhaps the age of political singing off the same hymn sheet, preferred by Alistair Campbell's era of spin, has been killed by the rise of social media. There have always been off-key politicians, of course. And in the red corner, John Prescott, Claire Short, Jess Phillips, and in the blue one, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Widdicombe Nadine Dorris, to put the most wayward of them all, who built the going off message into an engine of political self-promotion, Boris Johnson. And as I said in that particular video, Is Lee Anderson just trying to do well, a northern version of Boris Johnson? I very much think he is generally trying to do that. But Anderson is different because of that most of British preoccupations of class, or to be more precise, background. Doris is working class, but she isn't a former miner, an ex-Labour councillor, and an MP for a Midlands marginal, Ashfield. And Labour in every general election since its creation. So another brick in the red wall. Um, you're going to lose that general election. Like I say, his own constituents don't really seem to be that warming to him as he claims. And all the polls do show he will probably lose that seat at the next general election. And to be honest, he should be pretty much consigned to the political trash heap afterwards. Like I say, Labour aren't going to take him back. The Conservatives are probably going to keep him at a very, very long arm's distance, that's for sure. And I doubt there's going to be too much enthusiasm to have him stand in other seats. So, popular with our readers, his colleagues, and according to Andrew Grimson's report from Ashfield and his constituents, Labour doesn't seem to quite know what to do about Anderson. Attack him and his former party risks seeming to attack the party's old heartlands, of which Ashfield is typical. Well, actually, no. You can attack him on a ton of stuff. His whole shtick for Lee Anderson is, I was Labour. Labour have done nothing for Ashfield. So I've decided that it's Boris Johnson. It's this whole levelling up agenda. It's the whole Brexit stuff. So I'm changing to be a Conservative, vote Conservative, and you'll see how wonderful Ashfield becomes. No, that hasn't happened. His constituents aren't really that warm to him. There is a movement to get rid of him because, as we said when we had a look at that, he's making the place a complete joke, laughing stock. His constituents don't like him. And the thing is, Labour can come back at the next election and say, Lee Anderson promised this, this, and this. Your town hasn't done that. Cue the Rishi Sunak clip of taking money from poor areas like Ashfield and giving it to the more affluent, wealthy Tory areas. Gee, I wonder how Lee Anderson's going to respond to that. Back to it. So the party's old heartlands, of which Ashfield is typical, they failed to do so, and it offends its new ones, exemplified by Keir Starmer's own seat, Holborn and St Pancras. Has anyone tried since your promotion to muzzle you? Andrew asked Anderson during his Ashfield visit. To which he replied, when given the job, the message is loud and clear. Keep saying what you're saying, keep doing what you're doing. What was the point? Was that the point of the appointment? To out Heineken, even Johnson, and for far more authenticity. No, that is the exact point. I really do believe he was put there. I think he was generally put there to say, I can win these red wall seats. Well, the local election certainly wasn't proven the case that he could do that. And of course, in the upcoming general election, all the polls say he loses his seat, and the Tories not only lose all those red wall seats, but they also lose a lot of those other northern blue wall seats as well. So they're in a massive pickle, and appointing someone like Lee Anderson was meant to appeal to those red wall voters. And unfortunately, his appeal is very, very marginal at best. Very, very marginal at best. You want to know really how to defeat Lee Anderson? Get him to talk about policy. Like, I am genuinely serious. Get him to talk about policy. He won't have a single answer or coherent question, or even a coherent answer, to say the least. I mean, I talked, what is it, a couple of years ago with Count Dankula. I said, let's have a conversation about policy. He had no comeback to any of the stuff I was saying. He said, what do you think about this policy? Oh, I think it's all right. What do you mean? Why do you think it's all right? What do you mean about it? What about the consequences? He had no answers. And yet that is someone who is meant to be highly political and a political commentator. He's not really. I think that video, that entire thing shows he's not, because he's not comfortable really talking about policy. He ran away from even talking about economics. Same for Lee Anderson. I think if you generally cornered him and asked him to actually talk about politics, about policy, he wouldn't have anything to say. His entire party has nothing to say on 13 years of absolute Tory failure. Now he will say, "Oh no, I came in 2019. I'm not responsible for anything that came before that." But his entire shtick was, "Look, in 2019, if you vote for me, Ashfield will change for the better because Labour have done nothing for Ashfield." It's you see this very, very often from a lot, and I mean for most of the people who do run in the up north do run on that message all the time. And it very, very ever rarely works. It worked in 2019 because of the whole political situation at the time, but after this, the next election, it's not a viable strategy. Never was before. 2019 was certainly the exception where it did seem to work, but after this, absolutely not. It is not going to work in the slightest. So, or as the left would collectively see it, to froth up the voters' worst instincts into a form of racism, self-righteous resentment, and hatred. And on one hand, nice for Sunak. On the other hand, the nasty Anderson, doing all the former's dirty work for him on social media and GB News, while he posts hypocritically about rebuilding trust in politics. And so, and if so, have the Conservatives miscalculated because their deputy chairman is repealing more voters than he attracts? And that is true. Lee Anderson's appeal is very, very small. Very, very small. I think the Conservatives have very, very much overestimated that. Very, very much so. So it is important in mulling that question to grasp that Anderson is actually a deputy chairman rather than the deputy chairman. And the party's website, which has sections on gender pay statistics and parliamentary diversity data, doesn't appear to list this ever churning cast. However, one of them, Nikki Aylan, the MP for the cities of London and Westminster, and her name has been cited to me as to try to help explain Anderson's appointment. If one deputy chairman was from the capital, another must come from the provinces, and one of the party's newer seats at that. There was another reason. Anderson, I love this. Anderson is an excellent communicator. Quite so. No wonder he now has his own GB News show. As we said last time about Anderson copycatting Boris Johnson, he is not a good public speaker. He is absolutely awful when it comes to public speaking. The shorter his speech, to be honest, the better it is for him. Johnson, on the other hand, could easily talk for 30 minutes to an hour and come across at least somewhat entertaining. He might have said nothing in that 30 minutes to an hour talk, but at least, hey, it was entertaining. Anderson can't even do that. His GB News show, his viewers are dropping like stones, according to the statistics, and insiders have said that he is definitely on the chopping block come his contract ending, because I doubt GB News are going to renew his contract, especially when he's no longer an MP. Why? What's the pull? What's the draw? It's just Leigh Anderson at that point, and he hasn't really got a lot to say. So I like this though. I bet he keeps his grip on that, even if he loses Ashfield next year. I bet he won't keep his grip on that. I guarantee once he loses his seat, he loses his GB News show. Wouldn't be surprised if that's in his contract somewhere. But anyway, like many men who tell jokes, Anderson does so in part as a protective screen for his feelings, connecting with the wider public because it senses his vulnerability as well as his toughness. Andrew wrote. What? Oh yeah. Um wow. This is not a good defense because you see this from the right all the time. We've just mentioned Count Dankula. Count Dankula does this all the time as well. Um, he'll say something knowingly provocative, etc., and then he'll just go, "Oh, what do you mean? It's just a joke, bro. Don't get so mad about it." But here's the thing: Lee Anderson is an MP, and unfortunately, his voice carries weight, a lot of weight. Unfortunately, um, Lee Anderson's message that he had recently will carry a lot of weight. It will unfortunately encourage a lot of racism, and that will be bad. That will be bad. That will be bad consequences all around. To be honest, he should be at least be sanctioned. If I was Rishi Sunak, I would be certainly giving Anderson um, a very sort of stern talking to. But as you can see at the top, he was given free license. Go say what you want, as long as you win as the Red Wall. Probably within reason. But he is becoming slowly but surely, steadily more extreme, as most of these people do. So it won't be long before he probably says something a bit too far that he can't take back and then claim it's not a joke. But there you go. So, contrary to the left's take, he seems to be a nice guy. He really doesn't seem to be a nice guy at all, considering everything that we've seen so far. As for being put in place to speak plainly, saying in a language that people will understand that people who arrive by small boats have no reason to leave France and should go back there, then why didn't he say that? Oh, because if he drops the F bomb, um, the right wing papers will wet themselves with glee. That's why. That's why he's done it, to get attention. There can be no doubt about it. Of course, that will be part of the reason for his appointment. But that doesn't mean that he was put in place to F and blind. With points to a general truth about number 10, whichever the party holds of office at a particular time. A canny minister's first response, when told that the Downing Street wants something done, will always be the same. Who in Downing Street? I doubt that team is at the top of the party actually grasped that when appointing Anderson, just how off message he is capable of being. The conventional politician never says, we have failed, at least until after the election is lost. And that is true. Anderson admitting that his whole party and policy that he is a part of has failed does indicate that maybe they should change tax and that maybe these really harsh measures that they have been pushing aren't actually working, because they've been pushing these harsh measures for quite some time and, well, they're still not working. So why not instead refund the Home Office that you can help sort out the backlog more efficiently, more, and more quickly, and, actually have a functioning asylum processing system, and then set up safe routes, which we've said before, instantly ends the need for these small boats instantly. Will there still be one or two? Oh, yeah. But the vast majority will then use these safe routes, which will eliminate the need for them to use these small boats. Not only that, I don't see Nigel Farage at Stansted or any other local airport close to him with his binoculars looking at the different airlines saying that's full of immigrants, because that's how most immigrants actually arrive in the UK by airport. But there you go. So back to it. So, let alone to actually draw the attention to the fact that he is deputy chairman of the party with such a record in his view. There will be different views in number 10 and CCHQ from different people. And I doubt Sunak is investigated uh, the appointment himself or was especially engaged with it. So, is Anderson a net winner or loser of Conservative votes? The bleeding obvious answer is there is no way of knowing. Well, actually, there is a very obvious way of knowing. You look at the polling intentions for his own seat. Uh, every polling intention shows he clearly loses at the next general election. I would say that is a pretty obvious answer that you are a net loser of Conservative votes. It's that simple. Anyway, trying to work it out would be impossible. It's really not impossible. I've just explained why. Trying to pick out what tune a singer is crooning while their choir warbles another one, which takes us back to the familiar metaphor of singing from the same hymn sheet. Political parties look increasingly like choirs in which each member sings their own song. I'd also like to remind you at this point that people do not vote for divided political parties. Which is the most divided political party at the moment? Well, it's the Tories. And time again, throughout every single election, especially in recent modern history, especially since the end of World War II in the UK public has not voted for divided political parties. The Conservatives are so divided at this moment, there is not enough room to even try to span some sort of bridge. And it's not just one divide, it's many, many divides across many different topics, with the chasm so deep, it's deeper than the Rio Grande. There you go. Oh. So, you blame social media. So social media is part of the reason. No, it isn't. Um, Ending it as part of the age of the news cycle to the transformation of MPs into local campaigners was exemplified by the recent Tory parliamentary selections. Is another, and as the wrecking of Johnson's housing plan showed, an 80-seat majority isn't what it was. That's because Johnson dare not actually take on those people who are voting against those housing plans. No prime minister has dared to take on any of those in his party who have rejected those ideas. Now, I'll agree there are some logical reasons to reject some of those housing plans because some of them involve, well, if you're going to build all these houses, what about the infrastructure? And the infrastructure just wasn't thought of widening the roads, providing more sewage, building more reservoirs so you've got more water supply for local villages, etc., etc. You can't just go around building houses, you know, just randomly. You've got to actually have a coherent plan. And we've talked about this before many times. We cannot just simply build our way out of the housing crisis. You've got to also tackle landlords as well if you really want to properly solve the housing crisis. But of course, the Tories aren't going to tackle that. They're not going to touch it with a barge pole, not even touch it with Lee Anderson holding the barge pole. And here's the thing: if this guy, Paul, wrote this article, really wants a true test of is Lee Anderson popular for gaining Conservative votes, I would ask him at what point, or can he name a single point where Lee Anderson has spoken out about a particular Tory party policy that has then become more popular? And I'll save him searching. He hasn't, because Lee Anderson never talks really about policy. He's just a convenient mouthpiece. And even he can see that his own party policies are failing. He's just really angry about that. So he's on the side of, no, we need to really double down on immigration. Again, we need to go harder. Well, they've always gone harder. They've always doubled down on going on harder over trying to solve immigration. But that has shown time and time again that is not working. So maybe you need to think differently or look at other ideas. But of course, they can't because they are so terrified of a comeback of Nigel Farage. That's why they're so desperate to try and solve these small votes, because they're so worried that Nigel Farage will come back um, and ride that wave of anger that will take enough votes away from them in certain seats that they will lose. That's what they're worried about. No other reason. But here we go, back to it. Uh, um, so, are they simply less willing to be told what to do? Local interests have never had it so good. The national one, of course, is another matter. So why has Rishi Sunak then not deployed Lee Anderson to also have a talk with these people who have been against these housing plans? Lee Anderson is just not a good MP. What's the other big thing we are trying to get at, especially in the last video we made about him? He's just not a good MP. So, how will houses that families need get built if MPs won't back their construction? Will there ever be a new nuclear power stations come from in a country that was so originally a nuclear leader, but has since lost it? Found it easier to gamble on foreign gas, despite being controlled at that. Can these investment zones really sing with a big relaxation of planning constraints? Yeah, these investment zones, very, very tangible if they will actually ever really work, but we'll see. And then there is this new cultural bias to authenticity. And Anderson is nothing if not Mr. Authenticity. His universally educated opponents will view him as a relic of the past. I see his refusal to stay on message as the shape of things to come. If you see that as a shape of things to come, if you see his refusal to engage with the party to get things done, how is that the future? You are saying that the party's permanent future of the Conservative Party, which, to be honest, is good. If you want it to go in that direction, you carry on, my friend. Carry on in that direction. We'll see how long you stay out of power next time, shall we? You have to have a party that works together and functions together. Are there going to be disagreements? Absolutely, there are going to be disagreements. But the big fundamental problem with the Conservative Party consistently is they have big questions which require big answers to be able to solve. The problem is they are terrified of even asking those big questions and having the conversation about what the answer to those big questions should be. Very often they are terrified to have that conversation because it splits the party along these massive ideological crazy lines. The European question was a fantastic point, which we are now suffering from thanks to Brexit, which, remember, still has not been solved. Even though you have done Brexit, the idea that the European question in the Conservative Party has been solved is completely ridiculous. So, how can you say that Lee Anderson refusing not only to stay on message, but to refuse to sing from the same hymn sheet should be the future? Because at that point, how can your party effectively and cohesively, campaign and govern at that point? The real answer is you're looking at it right now. Rishi Sunak cannot govern. The party is so split. And to say straight faced, as you seem to have written this article, is Lee Anderson the future of politics? No. The long answer is no. And you keep on going like that. I cannot believe someone from Conservative Home would seriously write, although, to be honest, I can believe that they would, write an article trying to say, is Lee Anderson really the future of politics? Because you are saying that MPs should not be loyal to their party and show no party loyalty, that they should go off script, you know, and say anything that they want, so long as it maintains conservative votes, which you yourself have admitted in this article you can't really prove. And remember, all the polling shows Lee Anderson loses his seat at the next general election. So your entire premise that he attracts voters, he's turning off his own voters in his own constituency. Well, we did say it was a silly season, and maybe the silly season has indeed affected Conservative Home. But we'll see what other hilarity and hijinks we get from Conservative Home. Uh, like I say, normal service will probably not be resumed on Conservative Home, at least until September. Uh, but there you go. Conservative Home asking seriously, is Lee Anderson the future of politics? Yeah, this isn't a serious question. And to be honest, if someone asked this seriously, I would not be able to give a serious answer because I would be too busy ruffling on the floor. Um, but there you go. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.